And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr, joined by Juan Zarate, our national security analyst. Juan, good to see you.
Bob, always great to see you.
One of the biggest topics we talk about here from time to time is terrorism and the war on terrorism, or battles of counterterrorism. Where do we stand with this? Are we where we want to be?
Well, I think, as we've talked about, Bob, the environment's gotten more complicated, perhaps in some ways more localized, but also more dangerous. The al-Qaeda threat that we once knew in 2001 is fractured. We've called it the al-Qaeda Hydra in many ways. And one thing that's really interesting, Bob, as we have focused so much attention on the attacks in Boston, rightfully so, we've also perhaps lost sight of other attacks that have been thwarted in the last couple of weeks and other ongoing battles and attacks that are happening around the world. And so for me, that's incredibly interesting, and it's worth talking about.
So we should not become just so tunnel focused on the thing that happened up the street, that this is a threat that manifests itself in a number of places in a number of ways.
Right, and it's evolving. And so, for example, in Toronto, right after the Boston attacks, there was significant disruption of a plot by al-Qaeda to attack the train from New York to Toronto. A three-man cell organized out of the al-Qaeda group in Iran, significant. And the leader of the plot was found in the U.S. and arrested. He was also planning potential biological attacks in the U.S. And so that's a plot that was significant, came from al-Qaeda, was going to hit the Western Hemisphere, the first really targeting Canada directly, and we didn't give it much coverage. In addition, in Egypt, the Egyptians thwarted an attack, presumably against the U.S. Embassy and other sites. Again, al-Qaeda more active in Egypt, connecting with the groups in Sinai. You've had other activities, attacks from the Pakistan Taliban in Pakistan, continuing attacks from al-Qaeda in Iraq, obviously the al-Nusra Front in Syria, the attack in Turkey, who knows where that came from, and then obviously the attacks that we've seen in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, with Goodluck Jonathan claiming a state of emergency, moving troops to the north to battle the Islamic militants there.
Well, let me ask, is this maybe just terror fatigue? Are people just kind of worn out after a decade thinking about it, talking about it? I mean, I know we just can't pretend like it's not there, because it is there.
Yeah. By the way, I'm sick of talking about it,
yeah.
to be honest. But I think it's that. I think it's also that it's more complicated, right? These are, first of all, when you have disrupted attacks, it's hard to kind of
You're
imagine.
trying to prove a negative.
Prove a negative, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to talk about those. When something actually happens, obviously you dissect it, you cover it very heavily, like Boston. The other thing is it's just more complicated because it's more regionalized and localized. And so most Americans are not going to be caring too much that there's an ongoing battle in Mali between the African forces and the French forces and al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, or the Nigerian forces and Boko Haram. But it matters because
tell me why it matters. Help me understand why that matters.
Well, this is why it matters, because these are the new branches, the franchises of al-Qaeda. These are the groups that have embedded the ideology of al-Qaeda, even the methodology, and are taking it forward. And so it's not just the old al-Qaeda of bin Laden, or now run by Ayman al-Zawahiri, the Egyptian doctor, that we have to worry about. It's these other branches that are building capability, and in the case of some of these groups, looking like insurgencies that are controlling territory and are causing huge disruptions locally, regionally, and could be platforms for attacks against the U.S. That's what we saw, remember, with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula out of Yemen, and we've seen the underwear bomber, the package plot, all these things that worry counterterrorism officials have come from one of these franchises. And what you have are these groups that have metastasized, inspiring others, and still trying to hit the West. We saw it in Boston with some of the inspiration that they've got. We saw it in Toronto. We're going to continue to see it.
And the inspiration is the big problem. And beyond what the groups themselves can do, it's how they motivate others to act.
That's exactly right, and that's what you've seen from al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula with Inspire, the online magazine, the attempts to get people to attack in place against their fellow citizens, and we see evidence of that.
All right, well, it's a difficult subject, and we're not done with it.
We're going to keep watching.
Okay, thanks, Juan. And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.